The Shin brothers, Ian and Malcolm, have trained close to 250 winners together, including 12 at Group 1 level. But their domination of the filly series through the 80s and 90s is a story that needs to be told. Today we get an opportunity to sit down with Malcolm, have a chat to him about his life in harness racing and some of the bigger names in the sport that had a huge influence on his career. Malcolm, harness racing wasn't always in the blood, so how did you get involved in it?
Harness racing wasn't, but my father had gallopers, and my grandfather was an ex-jockey. He was a jockey when he was young, so I was always handling horses, but yeah, had nothing to do with standardbreds.
Right, education-wise, school wasn't your thing?
Oh, you know, I like school. I don't know why they kicked me out.
You'll probably work it out. You got to go pretty early to work though, but you sort of sifted your way through a few jobs before you landed on one with the great horse trainer in George Noble. Yeah,
there was an ad in the paper and it said wanted someone to help prepare yearlings for the yearling sales and for 6 weeks. I thought, that'll do me, 6 weeks. So drive up Royden Lodge off Gildas Road there, and I got to meet this Mr. Noble who didn't know, he was never heard of him, and he comes in, he interviews me and he goes, can you handle a horse, can you? And I was pretty cocky, I know you won't believe this, I was quite cocky. And I go, I can handle any horse. And he goes, Shin, are you in relation to Frank Shin? He's one of my school friends from Sydney, Frank Shin. I go, Uncle Frank. Never heard of the man. Told him years later.
Probably got you the job though.
He did, the job's yours. And he took me under his wing because I think I was Frank's nephew.
Yeah. So when's this, Mel? Was this sometime in the 70s?
Oh yeah, would have been, yeah.
Yeah, about the mid-70s, or just after Stanley Rio, or was he?
No, Stanley Rio was there, yeah.
Yep. What a remarkable horse he was, winning a Cup at 4 and an Inter-Dominion as well. So it would have been a pretty cool time to be around those.
Oh yeah, but not just the horses. George Noble was the most brilliant man, the horse I've ever seen, and brilliant trainer. Like he had another horse called Bonnie Frost, and she's a very, very towy filly. We used to pull, and every day we had to have it geared up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because the old boss would have a sleep at lunchtime. Gear it up, and he'd walk it for 2 hours from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock round the track for 2 hours every day, and it lasted about 4 months. And he quieted her right down, so every time she got in the cart, she thought, I'm not working, I'm just going to go for a walk. And she ended up winning 5 Oaks.
Yeah. 2
in New Zealand, 3 over Aussie.
Yeah.
But you're dealing with George Noble. He wasn't your normal trainer. Like, he had a university degree. He was a very, very bright man as well. He was a qualified architect.
Pretty good bloke to learn off then, I'm picking.
Oh yeah, well, you're learning off someone that, and he's a brilliant horseman with it.
So some of the methods that he had back then, and I know the breeds changed and all of that sort of thing, but you'd still be using them now?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Just the whole thing, We take a long time to bring a horse up. That's why I don't really train outside horses, but like someone owns it outright, because they would get sick of paying the training bill because we take that long.
Well, it didn't take you long to get your first Group 1 winner. Tell me a little bit about Nostradamus, and obviously it was the start of a relationship with Wayne Francis, and Paul Renwick actually part-owned that horse as well. So tell me about Nostradamus.
Yeah, they're both great fellas, yeah. Wayne was doing a subdivision up Westmoreland, and Paul helped him somehow. I think he bought some sections to put houses up, and they ended up having it was a lasting friendship. And then to pay Paul back, Wayne gave him a half share in this horse Nostradamus, yeah. And that's how they started. They were good, great mates right to the end, they were.
Yeah, ended up winning a New Zealand Messenger. I think Peter Jones drove him, and drove him quite a few times. He was a really good staying type, wasn't he, Nostradamus?
Oh, he was, yeah. Yeah. He was, I think he was 4-year-old of the year that year, eh? He won 2 or 3 good ones that 4-year-old year.
Yep, he won at the Cup meeting, he won the Orari Challenge Stakes prior to winning that Messenger, but Yeah, he was a very, very good horse, wasn't he? And a good horse to get at the start of, I suppose, your career. And alongside you, and has been the case pretty much in your 40-odd years of training, has been your brother Ian. Tell me a little bit about, he's a lot quieter guy, isn't he?
Is he?
He doesn't like the limelight whatsoever. However, his name was always down as the trainer.
Yeah, had him. Yeah, Ian was the trainer. Yeah, yep. He did a great job. He's a good horseman, and yeah, but he just sort of got sick of the game, you know. But just wasted talent. Very good horseman.
Why is it, and he still works on the starting gates at Riccarton, or how did you come to this place where we are now in West Melton?
Well, that's a real good story because Nostradamus wasn't my first horse. My first horse was, I bought a horse at the yearling sales. I had two good mates, Johnny Seaton, who I went to school with, and Brian Johnson, and they said to me, you know how you're such a know-all about horses, Malcolm, you say you know everything about horses and that. Must have been I'm talking at the pub. And so they said, we'll give you the money, you go and pick a horse at the yearling sales. Yeah. And I picked a horse, first horse I ever owned was called Regal Shine, and she ran third in the Oaks, drove her all the time myself right through, and that was the start of, that was my first horse. And then I'm such a tinny bugger. The next one is an old Irishman pulled up at the gate. It's from Ashburton, Jim Hewitt, and he came in and he goes, you fellas think you're pretty tough, don't you? And I go, well, we think we are. I said, we've got this big yearling and we can't do anything with it, you know. Well, the horse turned out, he gave me half share, and it turned out to be Lopez Song, which a lot of you probably don't know, but would be the best horse I have ever trained. Right. Yeah.
Tell me a bit more about it.
Well, we didn't try him as a 2-year-old. He was pretty big, and so we started him as a 3-year-old, and we're a bit of a greenie, so I wanted to get him really, really fit in that, you know. So we went 8 trials, and naturally he won 8 of them. That's how good he was. And I actually started thinking I was a bit of a driver, you know. I didn't realise it was the horse. No, he but a great record. He won some, yeah, in the Derby up north. He never started the Derby here, but in the Derby up north, he sat 3 wide for the last lap and still finished second or third. It was like it was a brilliant effort. And we didn't bring him home. They just snapped him up and brought him up there. Yeah. And back in those days, we got 150,000 for him, which I probably buy a couple of houses for that then, eh? So it was a great start, and just
snowballed from there.
Just luck, yeah.
So that's how you are. And the old boss, as you always refer to him, George, he encouraged you, didn't he, to get into some land?
Oh yeah, and the track. Listen, how good the old boss is. He put my track in for me. Incredible. Right. Yeah. You know what tracks cost, eh? Yeah. And he'd come out every Sunday. When I first bought the land, it had no house, but I lived in a caravan. He'd come out every Sunday, and I have to make him morning tea at 10 o'clock. The things he did for me was incredible. Yeah, incredible. And without him, I would not have like the 100 acres. Yep.
You talked before about driving, and I think your first winner that you and Ian had, you drove back in 1979. So why did you not continue on with the driving? And we'll talk a little bit about you've got a Group 1 win as a driver, but why did you see the need to use professionals, if you like?
Well, I worked out pretty early on after working down at Nobles for like 6 years, I was there, I think, that when you're half shares with someone, in a horse, the first thing they blame is the driver, then the trainer, then probably their aunt. They never ever blame the horse. Yep. And so I made my mind up, if I want to keep horses and keep up half shares and with owners and that, don't worry about the driving. You just stay home, Malcolm, and just worry about counting the money. And that's been my philosophy about driving.
Yeah, your motto ever since. About the Nostradamus time, you got the first of these outstanding fillies, many of which we're going to talk about, Preferred. Tell me about her.
Yeah, well, Wayne was half shares with down at Nobles, and then when the boss gave up training, he said, do I want to do the same deal? And I jumped at it. Yeah. So I got half share of Wayne's. I think he was breeding about 12 yearlings a year, So I get half share 12 yearlings, which was good when you got a good sire, but because he was running a stud and bringing stallions in, he'd put all his mares to the new stallion, and I don't think a lot of people would actually like to have 41 Nat Lobels like we had.
Yeah, just on Wayne though, and we lost him way too early.
Yep.
The establishment of Nevermore stud and what he contributed to the industry was enormous, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. He's a great businessman, and we ended up like, I was half shares in horse business, so I was in business to start with, but we ended up great mates. Took me skiing 2 weeks for 10 years. He had a place down Wanaka. No, really miss him.
By Boyden Hanover, preferred was, and she didn't have that many starts, but she won a Group 2 race at just her second start, the Flying Stakes, so she clearly was quite exceptional.
Yeah, no, she was very, very good mare, yeah. It was out of, it's well bred as well though, it was out of Bright Highland, who was a cup class mare, I think, so.
Yeah, she beat a cup winner, a future cup winner in Barana and Mighty Me in that, and just at start number 4, she was a Group 1 winner, she won the Oaks, and the New Zealand Oaks, and then the DB Fillies final, and I think Peter Wolfenden drove her in the DB Fillies final. That was a series that
Would
you
have been
guys... Yeah, it was up north.
Up north, yeah.
But you guys targeted that series for a long period of time, didn't you?
Oh, it was such great money. The heats were worth, I don't know exactly what they're worth. They were great money though. Triple what you get from a maiden race, and then the finals. So if you actually race for a bigger stakes the whole time.
The role continued though, Mel, because Quiet Touch dropped in.
Yeah, no, she was. She was a very good stayer. Eh? Same thing. Half share was Wayne. It was great.
She won 4 of her first 5. Was placed in behind Placid Victor in the Messenger and placed in an Auckland Cup. She won a Group 1 Breeders, but placed in an Auckland Cup. But we didn't really get to see the absolute best of her, did we? No,
she would have carried on, got better. Even another year on, she would have been better still.
Yep, that placing was behind Master Mood in the Auckland Cup and Skipperdale, and she won $300,000, Mel, back then. Which you talked about buying a couple of houses, you would have been able to buy 4.
Yeah, I have been pretty tinny.
That was about the time you started this association with James Stormont too. Tell me about that, because obviously when you're travelling horses north, and a lot of those fillies finals were up there, you had to have a northern driver, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. I reckon you're better to have someone who knows that, not just knows the track, anyone can know the track, but they're good old mates that they're racing against, and I think in a race that's quite, like they're not pulling horses up, but if their horse is stopping, I think you get a bit of a go.
Yep.
That's the way I had it worked out, so.
And he's driven over 1,000 winners, James.
So. Oh, he's a very good driver.
Yeah.
And he drives to instructions.
Do you think to some extent he's underrated?
Oh yeah, and wasted.
Yep. He's
down here now, people should be jumping, but I got a couple of maidens coming up and I'll definitely try and get him on them, eh?
Wayne passed away in the late 90s and not only left an enormous hole in the sport, but quite clearly I can see it affected you quite a bit.
Oh yeah, because as I said, we ended up really, really good mates, eh? And when he married Debbie at the wedding, put on a brilliant wedding, eh? And they reckon he would turn white when they when the MC said, and now Malcolm Shinn's going to say a few words, So he was a bit worried what I was going to say, but I kept it pretty cool.
Just want to go back to the early 90s and a horse that I remember very well because Brother Mo had a share in it, a horse called Franco's Notion, and I think Dean Payne was in that as well, and Dean's been in a few others for you, Susie Maguire. And the reason I'm saying that is because I know how much of a kick you get out of the boys, and you have a lot of them come and help you, particularly Saturday mornings and the like. But that's almost as been part of the institution of the Shin brothers racing stable as winning races for your mates.
Oh yeah, it's like those guys help me. They come at weekends and help me for nothing. So I've always got them into a horse, and yeah, luckily most of them have done pretty good out of them. We had an old fella called Vic Smith. He was a retired businessman in town. He was a good old fella. He'd come and drive out. He'd been over in his 70s. He'd drive out every morning and give us a hand. You know, so one time I said to him, we'll go to the salesman, we'll buy a horse for it. You've got to have a horse race with me. So he goes, I'll pay for it and you pick it. So I spent weeks poring over the catalogue, looking at this, then going around to the preparers and looking at the horse, thinking I knew everything, you know. So we bought this horse called Dainty Nero. I think she won the sales thing. We got Dainty Nero, and she, I think it cost us about $8,000 or something, or cost Vic $8,000. And then we're having a beer after, saying, shit, that we've got a bargain there. We've got a bargain, Vic. I'll tell you what, I like that filly, eh? Half an hour later, Vic goes out and he comes back into the, I'm still in the bar. He comes in waving a bit of paper, a sales slip. He's bought another one. And he said, I had to buy this horse. It was only $2,000. And I give him a lecture. I go, Vic, I spent hours into this thing. The one he bought was by Clever Innocence, which wasn't really fashionable. And he said, I said, you've got to look at them, you've got to study them, you know. You've got to be a noble like me. And the joke ended up on me because the one we bought won a few races, but the one he bought was called Dame Royce, and she won the Caduceus.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show you.
Yeah, remarkable story. Yeah. Also involved in those horses with him, I think, was Maury Neiman. So
yep.
They
were great golfing mates. So
yeah, they were. Yep, both played out at Templeton. I remember that well.
We've got an old horse that races every week because they drive her like we want it driven.
Is that Champagne and Wine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's not a good horse, anything like that, but you can race them every week if you're not knocking them around and doing stuff all during the week.
Yep. Well, she just punched past 100,000. I think she's won a dozen races. So
yeah. Unfortunately, Lisa.
Yes.
Owns half it, and I haven't seen any of the 100,000, the 50 grand. But there you go.
Yeah, it's also part owned by Jan Calvert, Jan and George, and some of those types of owners as well. They've stuck by you, haven't they?
They've been great people.
She had Caesar's woman, didn't she? Yeah, she raced. Yep, another good filly.
We're social mates as well. That's the big thing, eh? So
a filly that, I talked before about you not liking the spotlight, and certainly the media side of things has changed a lot, but Nevermore, who Wayne owned, got more FM involved, and that was a big thing. James Daniels and Ken Ellis back then. So the horse was named after the radio station, and she ended up being pretty bloody good, didn't she?
Yeah, no, it was, yeah. It was more, it's like it was a promotion thing, because Wayne and I owned it, but we did a lease thing to them, to the radio station, and yeah, that was great. Yeah. I got invited to all the parties. It was,
you'd hate that.
Oh shit! They put some good things on that radio station.
Yeah, well, she won the Caduceus. So again, another of these Group 1 winners, which we keep talking about. And I know you didn't know until we sat down today that you and Ian have trained a dozen between you. Which
I definitely thought it was about 7. I've never really added them up.
Yeah, and 11 of them were fillies. So. Is there a reason for that? Is because you've had some good colts as well, but is there a reason that you guys had such a domination in the fillies area?
Oh no, we sell the colts, Steve. We but when you get them, the yearlings, then you're about 50-50. But the colts are easier to sell in those days than the fillies.
And that's been a big part of your operation, hasn't it? Getting them up and going, trialling them up, and I suppose, for want of a better term, showing them off.
Yep, you've got to do that to make money in the game, If you're just racing like Champagne and Wine, she might have won 100,000. That's over 3 years. To work that one out, it's not big money.
What about Susie Maguire? Because I know I watched all those other horses race, but she, as a young horse, she wasn't unbeatable, but she wasn't far off it.
Yeah, as a 2-year-old, I think she only got beaten once, didn't she? Yeah, no, she was. Yeah, real precocious juvenile she was.
Yeah, and she was part owned by Dean Payne, wasn't she?
Yeah, Dean had, he did, yeah.
Your success at Alexandra Park, I mean, your track out here, if you look at it compared to some of the state-of-the-art training tracks we have now, you haven't changed it at all. So the Auckland way of going, how did you prepare them for racing the right-handed way?
Well, we worked them again, the old boss. We work them, they work both ways all their life. And that's really, it's common sense, because the inside leg is taking, around the banking track, and it's taking all the weight. So surely it must be if you spread your weight over two different legs,
Yeah.
So we've been real lucky. We have supple really breakdowns. You get the odd few now, everyone's going to, but yeah, we've been, follow the old boss's thing. Bring them up slow, work them both ways.
You took out the licence about 2007 and 8, and Sea Swift Princess was another horse that did a great job for you, but did an almost better job for one of your southern mates, Gordy Lee.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me how your association with him, because that goes back a long way.
Yeah, met Gordy, and I got the system that, like, if they're not good enough to win here, send them down south, which is a bit easier, eh? And if they're not as good for there, we just send some to Mike O'Brien, and he'd take the Palmerston North.
Yep.
You know, Mickey House is doing the same sort of thing now, but we just rated where the horse was better suited, eh? And yeah, Gordy did a brilliant job. He's done a brilliant job over the years for us down there, eh?
Yeah, when we look back at the Mike O'Brien, Mike and Pat's record as well, and your horses dominated many of their wins. So that system was working pretty well. You might have been ahead of your time, Mel.
Well, I always think that, you know, the opinion I've got of myself. Yeah. No, I think one year, well, I know it was right because Pat then won the Marlborough Trainer of the Year, and so I got invited to the celebration.
Another function.
Yeah, another function. And I think they had 19 winners and 17 from horses we'd sent up there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So it was a good system, sending the real bad ones up there, the ones a wee bit better down to Gordy.
Yep.
And then the hardest place to win a race is Addington. The old boss used to tell me that.
Yeah. Well, you've got to have a good horse. You've got to take the right horse there, don't
you?
Malcolm, a horse that I suppose is even more special now, and again, I don't really think we saw the absolute best of him, was State of Affairs. And one of the reasons that it means so much is Lisa, your partner, her father, Luigi, as you call him, was a part owner of this horse.
Yeah, great guy. So he'd played around with a couple of horses, and I said, why don't we go to sales and buy one? So we, lucky we picked him, and he was a real good horse. And Luigi and Nairi, they had the time of their life. They didn't used to travel much, but they travelled everywhere with that horse from Invercargill to Auckland, and it was a shame the horse went amiss in I think it was in the Jewels.
Yeah,
got checked badly in the Jewels, and that was his last start. He'd done some damage.
Yeah.
And Luigi was enjoying himself so much. It was bad that it came to an end that quick, really.
Yeah, Dennis we're talking about, and I remember distinctly it being Dennis Daly, because I thought the phone rang one day and the bloke just started talking, and what do you think of my horse, and do you think he'll get in the Jewels? And I said, well, hang on, mate, let's start with your name, because I didn't know who it
That'd
was.
Be him.
He was flat out, flat out. But he really did love that horse, and he ran fifth in the Northern Derby behind Sushi, but his runs in the Taylor Mile and Messenger the next year, where he was fourth and third, they were really good runs.
Yeah, that's the bit that annoyed me, because he would actually bet another year on him. I told Luigi this horse will be real good. This horse will be a cup horse next year, a cup class horse next year. He just got better. He wasn't really a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
3-year-old, he still had maturing to do. It was a shame, really.
Just going back to Gordy Lee, one of the ones I do remember that he did a great job with was Royal Council, who he won Southland Oaks on, and it meant a lot to him, and I'm picking it meant a lot to you too.
Oh yeah, no, any races.
Was Jan Calvert was in that too, I think.
Yeah, Jan was, yeah.
Yep.
We, I think we bred that.
Yes, you did. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Rising up shop, they go to the line. I think Royal Council out wide.
So she was a good, strong, staying filly. And she finished fourth or fifth in the New Zealand Oaks as well. So we talked about George and John Noble. John had a big part to play, and he spent a lot of time at these stables after his father passed away as well. Derek Jones was very good to you early on, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, Derek was. He helped us a lot. He always had 3 horses for us to break in. We did his breaking in for him, and he always had 3 horses here. When you're starting off, it's good to be getting some income coming in consistently like that. And we ended up great. Another one ended up great mates.
Loved a whiskey and milk. Loved a celebration.
Yep, that's right. And I banged into town one night. He was with his mates on a Friday, and because when we break them in, we rope them, and we've had horses out here stand in the fence, because if they've been used to being roped, if they get caught in the fence, they'll just stand there. So Derek likes telling a story, and after he's through whiskies, he's telling his mates, there's about 6 of them, and he goes, I just got a horse back from those Shins, he said. He said, it was caught in the fence. He said, I reckon it'd been there for 3 days, because the manure was right up to the butt of its tail. He'd tell a story.
And he'd have everyone, wouldn't he? He'd have the whole audience.
Yeah, they were loving it, yeah.
A brilliant horseman. He won 2 New Zealand Cups, as we know, but he just had a way about him around the horses, didn't he?
Oh, I know, real good horseman. But it's like a great fella with it, entertaining. Like he enjoyed his life, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Malcolm, has there much should change? Have you enjoyed your life in the sport, and it's given you a decent sort of a lifestyle?
Oh, I know, I enjoy it. Yeah, there's nothing better than getting out in the morning there, and you bring, like I say, we bring them up slow, but thinking this could be the next good one. This could be a good quid in this one.
Yeah.
And then I suppose, buddy, 70% of the time, it's a fallacy, but it's what keeps you going. You've got to have something to aim for in life.
And what does the future hold? I see there's a few young ones out there now, so how many are you doing? I see Ian out there doing some work for you each day too. And
yeah, he gives me a good couple of hours a day, yeah. Well, the future for me is like this. My grandfather, I'll tell you, one that was the ex-jockey, he'd drive out here every morning and drive horses, fast work. And do you know how old he was? 92.
Right.
So I don't know if I'll make 92, but if I do, I'll still be driving.
Yeah. Hey, looking up on the wall there, we've got 50th training win that a young fella presented to you by the name of John Morrison. He got a bit of education here, and I used to say to him, you'll be learning a bit about the horses, but you might get a bit of a life education as well.
Yeah, no, it was funny with Johnny, because I knew his mother and father good, I always got on, and she used to always have me on. I really liked his style in that day. And I saw this boy driving at the trials, and he drove good, he'd get them away good, and so one day I was having a punt on a horse, and I thought, if I put him on, that would put a few people off, So I put him on it,
yeah,
and Julie won, got the money, and he drove that good. We just let him keep driving it. I think he won the Geraldine Cup on her.
Right.
Later on, so it helped him get going, and it got me some money to start with. So we're both happy.
So then
but he's a very, very good horseman.
Wasn't he? Yeah.
Oh, good worker, mate, and good horseman.
Yeah.
Very good horseman.
I'm not going to ask you for a horse for the future, because you always used to say to me that information's for the owners. That philosophy's always been there for you, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah, but that's another thing I learned off the old boss. If there's a quid to be made, why not get as much as you can out of the horse, And half the time it probably doesn't come off, but, a good story of the old boss, I could see he was setting one up for the race, to have it, because he liked a little nibble. They're not great big punters, but if you can get 8, 10 grand off a horse that you've spent all winter working up. So he's got this horse, and I'm watching him remove his days. He's a very good blacksmith, so he spent a lot of time readjusting his horse's shoes all the time, and I knew he was onto something, So we're out working, he's driving that one in front, and I'm in behind him, and the canal bugger goes, my watch has gone, Malcolm, could you give me your watch? And what he did was potentially just armed me. Yeah.
He didn't want you to know.
I had no idea
what he was about to find out.
Yeah, exactly.
And did the horse win?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, he was very cute. It was very, very good.
You were saying to me off camera a couple of days ago about how he could straighten a horse out, and he never used poles. He was that good with them. He could turn them around.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Him and me used to do the young ones, and they had 2 complete tracks down there at Royden Lodge, and so he would do the 2-year-olds, and the other fellows would and John would do the race horses. And I thought I knew everything. We'd work 2 together, and the boss would drive his one, and in front was going perfect, and my one would be hanging and galloping. And I came in one day and I said, boss, this thing's not much good. And he goes, don't worry, Malky, I'll drive it tomorrow, you drive my one. So I drove his one, perfect. He got on the Monterey all the trouble the day before, it drove as straight as a die and didn't miss a beat.
Yeah, some people have just got it.
As a gun.
Yeah.
I said to him, one day I'm going to be as good as you, boss. I've never quite made it, but he was a gun.